All right. Well, welcome everybody to today's webinar, Do More Planning, Here's How. My name is Stephen Taylor. I'm a certified financial planner and trainer with eMoney. Prior to joining eMoney about a year ago, I spent 14 years as an advisor, the last 3 of which running a small fee-only financial planning practice. With us today and our featured presenter is Greg Furer, CFP CRPC, and CEO of Beratung Advisors. I had the great pleasure of meeting Greg a few weeks ago, and after hearing his passion for educating and empowering clients, I realized that I had possibly met my financial planning soulmate. He truly has an unmatched drive and dedication to the craft that you will see shine through during his presentation. We highly encourage you to use the Q&A feature found at the bottom of your screen, as this webinar is for you, and we want to make sure that you get the most out of it. Also, please keep in mind that this is being recorded and will be shared along with the slides. Today, Greg is going to cover the following topics. It's going to help you identify what clients actually need, what's stopping you from doing more planning, how do you get started. He's going to relay an example, and finally, we're going to have a nice 10 to 15 minute Q&A session at the end. Our all-important disclosure slide. Keep in mind that this and the slides within, because you will have access to them, are for investment professional use only, not for use with the general public. All right. A little bit about Beratung. Beratung, which I learned through Greg's website, which you should definitely check out because it's really a work of art, and it goes to explain him and his practice and what they stand for. But that word is a German word for advice, guidance, or consultation, and it reflects their belief that financial planning should be a collaborative process. It was founded in 2016. They have 9 team members. They refocused on planning for fees and AUM as secondary. They do planning for all new households. They have a weekly team meeting on planning. They host quarterly trainings for advisors on eMoney. And finally, they use eMoney to grow clients and advisors. Now, before I kick it over to Greg, I'll relay one additional nugget that I found on his website, and that is that Greg states that an educated client is his best client, which I think speaks volumes for Greg and his practice. So without further ado, Greg Furer.
Well, Steve, thank you for that introduction. It's such an honor and a pleasure to partner with eMoney on this call. eMoney has been a big part of our success story, and we're just honored and privileged to be here. And quite frankly, it helps us live out our core values and our mission statements because we believe that we are trying to educate and empower clients, but also multiply that out and help other advisors do the same with their clients. So it's a pleasure to be here. With that being said, to talk about how to make planning a bigger part of your practice, I think we have to start with the logic of why it's important. And I'm not talking about the facts and figures. I'm sure everyone out there has heard that they need to make planning a bigger part because consumers want it and maybe it makes them a stickier client. But I'm talking about the logic. And there's 2 logics you can look at it when you're running a business. There's what's called consumer logic and producer logic. And the picture I chose up here was a restaurant counter, because this is also often used in the fast food industry as in front of the counter logic, the customer, and behind the counter logic, that's the person providing you the food. And a lot of times when we are behind the counter, we only think like a person behind the counter. And a lot of times we're the consumer, we only think like the consumer. We have certain wishes, certain things that we want to have happen that really aren't that important, or quite frankly, aren't that possible at the other side. One example of this is a person wants their food made the exact minute it's ready, and they want it made exactly the way they want it. But the consumer logic wants to be able to pre-make it and make sure that stuff is taken care of in advance. The consumer wants to have their food ready Right then, the producer wants to have a big tray and have all the burgers ready. Another way to look at this is a quote from Henry Ford. And Henry Ford is famous for saying, if I gave people what they wanted, I would have just given them a faster horse. And so I think that that's sometimes we got to think about that logic. And he was able to get out of the producer logic, but also think past the consumer logic as well too. So what we're going to start out with is we're going to start out with the consumer logic. What do your clients want? Why is planning such an important thing? And I believe that there's three things that all clients truly want. The first thing that they want is they want you to solve their problems, right? They're not going to come to you. I don't care whether you're a financial advisor, you're making widgets. Somebody's coming to your company because they have a problem and they want you to solve it. The question is, what's the problem? In this case, with the Model A Ford, Henry Ford realized people want to get from point A to point B faster. He was able to solve their problem, not give them this faster horse they wanted, to actually tackle the problem. The second thing that they want is they want you to make their life easier. Think about this with any product you buy. This is not just financial planning. This is not just investment management. Think about anything that you purchase out there. You're purchasing, you want to solve your problem. And the second thing you really want is to make your life easier. If that makes your life more complicated, you're not going to use it. I think of all these crazy kitchen gadgets. Yeah, they solve a problem I might have, but are they actually making my life easier? Or I'm going to literally throw them all in a closet. I'm never going to pull them out. So if you're not going to make my life easier, it doesn't matter if you solve my problem. And the third thing that your consumer wants is they want to know you're for them, that they can trust you. You're not in it for yourself. You're in it for them. You have to convey to them that it's all about them and not all about you. So when we think of that from a consumer standpoint of view, that helps us to understand why we need to create a Model A, financial planning, and not just a faster horse, which is a better investment portfolio. So let's talk about that faster horse. What I believe clients don't want are three things. And it's kind of the counter opposite of the first ones. They don't want more problems. So a lot of times they come to you, I have a problem. I want to retire at a certain age. And next thing you know, they leave your office. Well, if I die prematurely, my family's not going to be okay. If I get disabled, oh man, if I don't make these changes, they came in for one problem to be solved and you've created 3, 4, 5 problems for them. The next thing they don't want is a lot of meetings and a lot of work. And a lot of times when we're positioning financial planning, not only do we create more problems, we've also given them a lot of meetings and a lot of work. Nobody wants homework. We're all busy in today's society. Nobody has time, right? And the third thing they don't want is they don't want lectures. They want to know you're for them. They don't want to be told what they're doing wrong. They want to be having a conversation with you. They don't want to be lectured to and given math problems. But what does it actually feel like? So we know what they want. We know what they don't want. Let's put ourselves in the shoes. Let's get that in front of the counter logic. Imagine you are a person walking into your office. And I'm borrowing this recommendation from a lady at the FPA National Conference about 3 years ago. She was a psychologist, and she started out by saying in her speech, I want you to know in this room, most people hate financial planners. And we're all like, whoa, that's a great way to start out a meeting of financial planners. And she started laughing. She goes, really? That we think of you guys like lawyers and used car salesmen. It's not a good experience. And the reason why is we think of you a combination of three things. The first one is you're like a dentist appointment. It's a painful experience. We have anxiety doing it, but we do it once a year because it gets us the overall health that we're looking for. We're willing to bear with that to solve our problems. The second thing she said is it's like math class. Chances are you probably didn't like math. It probably wasn't your favorite topic when you were in high school or college, but yet they're going to come in your office and they're going to see more math than they've probably seen since high school or college. How does that make them feel when they leave your office? And then the third thing is it's like marriage counseling. And she went on to say that the number one reason for divorce in America is often cited as money issues. It's often the thing that people do not talk to their spouse about. So when you think about this, they have to come in, sit in front of a third party that's a stranger. They've probably met you once or haven't even met you. It's the first meeting. And you're going to talk about issues you've been trying to hide from your spouse. When they go home, they're going to hear, did you really mean to tell Greg that? I can't believe you hid that credit card from me. Do you really not save that much in your retirement plan? So it's a combination of three bad experiences. And that's why people either start the process out and don't come back, they don't refer, or they're just not happy with their advisor. So now that we understand what the consumer's feeling, let's look at the producer logic. If on this call, you want to do more planning, what's stopping you from doing more planning? And I would say that there's really four things I hear from advisors when it comes to why they're not doing more planning. The first one is it's too much work. Really? Isn't investment research too much work? I don't know about you, but pouring through Morningstar reports is boring to me. Look at alpha and beta and standard deviation. And if you're putting all the research in the SEC wants to see for your advisory accounts, that's a lot of work. Nothing in life is easy. It's going to be work. So that's what I think, yeah, it's going to be work. They're paying us for a service. You got to provide that service. The second one I hear all the time is, you know what, Greg, I just don't really know planning. You know, I've been doing this for 30 years this way, and I don't know it. I don't know where to start. Well, we all started out our careers that way, right? So if you've been in this for 30 years and you probably started out selling stocks and you've probably moved on to A-share mutual funds and you've probably moved on to advisory accounts, all along that way you had to adapt. And if this is what your consumers need, then you need to adapt. Because if you're out there selling faster horses, guess what? You're going to be out of business in 5 or 10 years when somebody does create that Model A. And there should be the third one is, my clients don't want it. Greg, you don't understand. Your book looks different. Everyone's book looks the same, right? We're all going after baby boomer money right now. Most people on this call, if you're on here trying to start advising or trying to get into financial planning more, you probably have the majority of your book is baby boomers because quite frankly, that's where the wealth is, right? And I have clients that are 90. I have clients that are 80. I have clients that are 70. And to say that they don't want it, I think is actually the complete antithesis. It's how you're presenting it because everyone actually cares about their problems. They don't care about the faster horse. They care about getting to point A. And their real problems, they want little Sally to go to school. They want to buy that second house at the lake or the beach. They want to retire at a certain age. They don't care how their investments do as long as it gets them to that point. They don't care if it's a faster horse or a Model A. They just want to get to point B. So when you say your clients don't want it, it's because you're presenting the faster horse, not presenting them how to get to point B. And the fourth one, the last one is, and this is what I hear a lot, Greg, it's just not profitable. Well, I can tell you my firm's profitable. We do financial planning. And there's a lot of firms out there do financial planning. So if you're not willing to sell that Model A and you're selling a faster horse, guess what? We're going to come along. We're going to sell them that Model A and we're going to take them off that faster horse. You can find a way to make it profitable. That's for another call, another time. We're starting with the basics, but trust me, it is profitable. You can make it profitable. So now that we really understand the consumer logic and we understand the producer logic, let's get some things that we can take away from this call of how we can get started to do more planning in our practice. So the first thing I think you need to do is you need to learn the language of eMoney. And the way I always talk about this is most of us have probably taken a foreign language at some point in our lives. And I took Spanish in high school. I took 4 years of Spanish. I knew a little bit of it. I traveled down to Mexico on some mission trips. I talked to some people a little bit brokenly, but I don't think after 4 years of high school Spanish, and even if I went and did 4 years in college, that I have enough fluency that I could go into Mexico and close a client for asset management or financial planning. I'm just not fluent in the language enough. And I'm probably going to sound like an idiot. But the reality is, I could probably go to an all-inclusive and say, dos más cervezas, por favor, and donde estás el baños, and that's going to give me my 2 more beers and get me to the bathroom, and I'm going to have a great time at that all-inclusive. That's how it is with eMoney and financial planning in general. A lot of times I hear people say, you know what, Greg, I tried it with one client. It didn't work because they didn't use the language. They didn't speak the language. They didn't come off as confident. And they convert back to what they already know, which is asset management, which they sound confident about. They can pontificate and sound all great when they talk about alpha and beta and standard deviation. And I picked this manager, whatever it is that you use, it's going back to what you know. And it's not so much that the financial planning is not what they want or the system's not what they want. It's how you're presenting it. So step one is learn the language of eMoney. Before you present it, learn it, which ties in right with number 2. The second step, once you learn the language of eMoney, try to open up the software first before you talk to a client about it. But the second step is start with your own financial plan. I don't know how anyone out there can recommend any person have a financial plan if they don't have it themselves. And you can say, well, you know what I recommend is aggressive stock account, but I'm a conservative person, so I have a different investment. I could buy that, or vice versa. But everyone, in my opinion, needs a financial plan. Unless you have no goals and you're never going to look at your money, you're never going to look at your checking account, you don't care when you're retired, you don't care what happens, you're a drifter through life, then that's great. That's a very, very small percentage. But usually if you're like that, you're probably not a financial planner. So do a plan on yourself. Before you start testing out, before you do anything else, do a plan on yourself. The example I always like to give is when I was younger and I got in this industry, I would talk to people about buying a house and buying a second house and a mortgage. And I didn't know because I was fresh out of college. But then when I bought my own house, it changed the way I was able to have that conversation with my clients because I experienced it. And if you experience your own financial plan, it's going to change that conversation. The third thing you want to do is learn on sample clients. You don't want to test on yourself. Create a real financial plan on yourself and stick to that financial plan. Don't use it as a test, as I like to call it, the sandbox. Use sample clients. eMoney does a great job of providing you sample clients. We want to work with different ethos of clients, different avatars of clients. So if you work with mainly millennials, work with a millennial looking client. If you work with mainly baby boomers, use that as a sample client and use it with clients to show them that sample client, right? If you have a sample client that has a $4 million net worth and you're opening up in front of a client that has $100,000 in net worth, it's not going to go over well, and vice versa. So learn on sample clients. Do the moves that you normally recommend to your clients. So now we've learned a language. We've started with our own plan, and we started to go on sample clients. Now I believe you're ready to take the next step and present to clients. And that's where number 4 is. Number 4 is use what's called a halo client. Many of you in this call are familiar with that term. For those of you who are not, it means you have a halo over your head. You're angelic to that client. Nothing you can do is ever wrong. Every single one of us has at least one of these. It's just the order of life, right? You're always got these people. It might be your grandma's best friend. It might be somebody that you just invested their money when the market was at an absolute low point. It grew so much that you can never do wrong. Find that halo client and test it on them and be honest with them. Hey, I'm providing this new service to my clients, and because you're my favorite client, I want to test this on you. And can you give me feedback, honest feedback about if this is really impactful to you or if it's a waste of your time? People love to give their feedback. People love to be the guinea pig when it has no negative effects on them. And if you're going to be charging for financial planning, do it for free. I normally charge $5,000 for this. I'm going to give it to you for free. All I want is your advice. And if you're still not comfortable, there's a 4.5. I don't have a slide for it, but just for those of you who don't want to go to the halo client first, do a pro bono client. Go and help somebody that's in debt up to their ears. Go and help somebody that you would normally not take on as a client, whatever that person looks like. Friend, family member, whoever it is, and say, I'm not going to bring you on as a client. I'm going to have you sign a CFP engagement if you're a CFP, whatever it might be. I'm going to have you do this, but I'm not going to take you on as a client. I'm not going to serve you. I'm going to give you this service for free, right? So now that we have 4 action steps that you could take and you can implement after this call to get you started with more planning, I want to talk to you about how to position planning. So now we're getting in front of that halo client. How do we position planning? Because I think that once you learn the language and once you've learned around the software, you have to position this well. And this is not a substitute for confidence. You have to be confident in what you're doing. That's sales 101. We don't have time for a sales pitch on this call, how to sell your clients on using you. This is positioning financial planning. And the way that we position financial planning, and the way that I would strongly recommend you do, is a concept that's called story brand. And story brand is by a gentleman named Donald Miller. It's a book. He has a podcast. He has a blog on it. If you want to go and look into it in more detail, you can. But the basic concept that Donald Miller has is that every time you tell a story, a good story, there's usually 3 characters involved. There's a hero, there's a villain, and there's a guide. And in Story Brand, he uses the Star Wars saga. He mentions it's a pop culture phenomena. And so for those of you that are kind of like 2 people on our team that have never seen Star Wars, you'll have to bear with me because this is what he uses in a book. but he talks about the hero. And here's this guy, Luke Skywalker, and he's on this epic journey to defeat his villain, which is the Darth Vader guy that's on the screen. And they have a guy that helps him. It's this little guy, Yoda. It could also be Obi-Wan Kenobi. But essentially, that hero can't defeat that villain unless that quest is there. And this goes back to biblical stories. This goes back to ancient times stories. They all have this archetype in here. And so when you are positioning something to a client, you're positioning these three things. The thing that people typically do wrong is they position themselves incorrectly in here. They position themselves as the heroes. I do so well for my clients. I create great financial plans. I get these great returns for clients. It's I'm going to help you. Oh, they got help in there. That's not a guide. They're making themselves the star of the story, the hero. What you want to do is make the client the star of the story. If you visit our website, you see all our branding. You'll notice that we use this in all of our branding. We're not perfect like anyone else, but that's how we position for our clients. We need to solve their problem. Their problem is their villain. So if it's little Sally going to school at the school they want to have funded, then we need to do that. If it's passing money on to their favorite charity, we need to help them with that. If it's buying that second house, we need to conquer that villain and make them the hero of their own saga, not our story. Whatever it is, whatever they want to conquer, we need to help them get there. And we need to celebrate them. Congratulations, you're 98% success to retirement. You know what? You worked really hard. You saved when others didn't. Just give yourself a round of applause. I don't see this every day. It's all about them. And when you position financial planning the right way, it needs to be that tool to make their life easier. You remember that was the third thing, that one of the three things there was making their life easier. And I've looked at a lot of tools out there, and the tool that I found that best positions it to make it not only simple for my clients, but simple for our team is eMoney. It's the best tool that we have found to help us be that guide and position ourselves that way. So now you've positioned financial planning to the client. There's one last thing before I actually show you how we do this in front of a client that I think is really important to cover, is you got to change your mental mindset. And you need to change your mental mindset to you will lose your client if they don't come on for planning. Get past this, I don't think my clients want planning. Your clients, if you don't give them that Model A, if you keep giving them that faster horse, they're going to end up a client of Beratung or fill in the blank to whoever your competitor is down the street offering this, because they want their problem solved. And if somebody else is going to solve their problem. So I think one of the things you can do to add more planning to your practice is start going in with the mindset, I'm not getting paid unless this client has a financial plan. I can guarantee you'll stop hearing people say they don't want financial planning. So now that we talked about that, let's talk about how we actually do this in the real world at our firm. You've probably joined because you heard our firm has been successful. We grew our AUM at 500% by changing that mindset. By stop saying, well, you know what, this client, they've been an AUM client forever. We're a very profitable client. We don't want to upset the apple cart. We said, nope, we have to go out and get our clients into financial planning. We use our process. It's a 6 steps of financial planning. I am a certified financial planning professional. We do follow the 7 steps of CFP. All right. But we reorder them and we word them differently. One of the steps is implied in our circle because we think that clients, when you see the actual 7 steps, the way they're worded, they don't understand it. And I'm trying to make their life simple. So you're more than welcome to go to our website and see this. But what you'll see is we break it into 3 phases. I don't have time to go through all these phases. What I'm going to talk to you about is that first meeting, our listen meeting. And in our listen meeting, the way we do it, the first time you come in as a prospect, we spend about 45 minutes listening to you. We're going to ask you questions that we do in the form of statements. We don't do open-ended questions. We're going to do statements. And we're going to get to the problem. We're going to find out who's your Darth Vader. Who's your problem? And that's what I want to show you, how we use eMoney as that tool in our listed meeting. Somebody had a question prior to this that we're going to address in the questions, but I want to answer right here. They asked, do you give a checklist to your clients? And we used to. And we found out that's actually the worst thing you can do, because now you haven't made your client's life easier. Go back to that homework, that math class. You are telling somebody before they ever met you, before they've had any value of what you're going to add to their life, that they have to go and do something most people hate, figure out their financial life. They came to you to figure out their financial life. They don't want to go through statements and figure that all out. We're going to show them that in this process to make their life easier, as opposed to give them a checklist. I actually tell people, don't bring anything to the first meeting. Bring yourself. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out that first meeting. They've talked for 45 minutes. And we're going to turn around. I say, I'm a certified financial planning professional. I'm not you see on my business card, it doesn't say I'm a life insurance salesman, investment advisor. I provide other services. We can talk about that at the end of the planning process. You've come to me for financial planning. And what I'm going to talk about is the tool that I use to help simplify your life. And I'm usually going to pick out whatever they told me their problem was. You want to retire at 65. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a sample client. And so this is my eMoney. I use Don and Betty Draper. It's a sample client that I've just renamed them because I'm a big fan of Mad Men. I like to have fun with it. And so what you'll see in this is we pull up this Don and Betty Draper. You can see the net worth is typically where our normal client is. And the first thing we're going to do, and Steve, if you want to go ahead and play that, we're going to go up to the facts, and I'm going to show them through here. Look, we're going to input your information. We're going to have your date of birth. We're going to have different family members. We're going to have your net worth. We're going to have your financial priorities of what's important to you. We're going to have all your expenses. Everything that you have, the liabilities is going to be listed inside of here. We're going to review a bunch of observations, and I'm going to show them these are the observations where we put our financial planning comments. We're going to have a next step, an action list for you to go through. We're going to take all this information, we're going to put it in here, and we're going to look at, in all market environments, what would your probability of success be? And you can see Mr. and Mrs. Client, with this sample client, before we talked, they weren't in a good position. They weren't guaranteed to get anywhere, but we could help them get some better. They were at 66%. And then we added on all these wishes. We ran a scenario where we turned on, you'll see all these buttons over here. We're going to customize all these for you. We're going to add all your wishes, all the dreams that you talked about to buy that lake house, to do that. And this client went down to 9%. But you know what? We talked through it and we were able to solve the problem. We got them up to 87% success rate. Why? Because we just helped them get to where they wanted to be, to help put it on paper. And then I'm going to say, you know what, to continue making your life simpler, I'm going to pull them in. I'm actually going to get their email address right then and there, show them what the invitation to the client portal looks like. I'm going to put them in the client portal. I'm going to show them the client portal, how to make their life easier. Here's how you add an account. And a lot of times I'll say, do you want to add an account right now? Do you know the passwords? No. We'll set up a meeting with my assistant. We'll go ahead and set that up later. Go through here. Do you know what your income expenses are? I'm going to show them all this information inside of here. Here's how you upload files. To make your life easier, at the end of this, I'm going to need to get some information from you. You have a couple ways. You can mail it to me. You can drop it off the office. We'll scan it for you. We'll make it however easy it is. But you can load it up here. You can pull on-demand reports on your life whenever you want. You want to know where you stand? You don't have to come in and talk to me. This information is going to be uploaded and going to be in relatively real time, depending on the type of accounts that you have in here. We're going to put all these alerts in here. You want to remember when your wife's birthday is, or your husband's birthday, when to file quarterly taxes, you're a business owner. We are going to make your life easier. That's when I go in, I go to the client. I usually have their name, so I have it already set up for them. I'm going to start to put this information. So now that we know that, let's just, what was your income? What was your date of birth? I didn't get that information. And anything that they don't have, we're going to go down to next steps. Anything I need in that conversation, I'm now going to create the checklist, but I'm not going to do a pre-filled checklist. What I'm going to do is I'm going to type it in as we know it. So for example, they might say, I need 2 years worth of tax returns. Yeah, we can provide that. I'm going to click on next steps. I'm going to add this in there and I'm going to type it in front of them because we are now making a verbal contract that they're going to get that information over to us. No, you know what? We need your Fidelity account to look at the positions and see what cost basis is on there. We're going to go ahead and put all that information in there. Once we have that information in there, what's great about this tool and why we don't use checklists at all, we do have a checklist available on our website because we do have engineer clients that won't come in and meet with us if they don't have the checklist prior, right? But once we have this, what I'm going to show you here is we're actually going to go ahead and copy and paste this. We have a form email that's a follow-up email. And we just copy and paste in, this is the things we discussed today. Oh, and by the way, here's the things we still need outstanding for you. It takes very, very little time. It makes you more efficient. It also makes the client's life easier. So now when a client gets home from your appointment, they already have an email sitting there with the next steps that they have to achieve. It just is about simplifying their life. So when you really do financial planning, you position eMoney in the correct way. You don't position this as a product you're selling. Let me introduce you to financial planning. What's your problem? You want to retire at 65? Here's the tool that's going to keep you to solve that problem and keep you on track, Mr. and Mrs. Client. That's what my goal is. My goal is to help you achieve those goals and keep you on track. And I have not found a better tool out there than this. So now that I've shown you how to use that, I just want to summarize, take 3 bullet points away, and we're going to open up the Q&A. Just a reminder, go ahead and submit your questions. We do have a lot that were submitted prior to this. We're going to get to those ones first. Hopefully we can get to all your questions. But the first thing is your clients need financial planning to solve their problems. They don't need investment management. That is one tool of many tools, just like they might need life insurance or whatever the heck else it is the financial plan tells them. Maybe they need a will, live will, and power of attorney. They need the financial planning because that's the only guide out there that's going to solve their problems. 2, eMoney is the best solution I have found to simplify not only for my clients, but for myself. I've looked at all the competitors in detail. There's pros and cons of each. But when it really comes down to solving problems and simplifying it, there's not a better solution than eMoney out there. And the third thing is you got to start treating financial planning in your practice as do or die. Because if you aren't providing it, somebody else out there is going to give them the model A. So with that being said, Steve, I'll turn it over to you. I know you have a couple things to say, and we're going to get started with Q&A. You're on mute, Steve. Steve, you're on mute.
Thanks again, Greg. That was really awesome. Gave us a really great understanding of how we can start moving forward. All the advisors on the line hopefully have some nice takeaways to start that process. But first, before we get to the Q&A, I do just want to say that, we covered a lot here today. Greg went over a lot of information. There's certainly an opportunity to show you more, discuss further many of the features, products, and updates. So before we open up for questions, just wanted to provide everybody with the opportunity to sign up for a custom demo. That was a question that did come in ahead of time. Is there a trial that you can get? Absolutely. That'll be in the chat right now. And you can click on that. And again, feel free to send those questions our way. If we don't get to your question today, we'll certainly make sure that we follow up with you post-webinar. All right, awesome. So we had a lot of great questions come in ahead of time, and I see several coming in now, which is fantastic. So let's dive in. We want to make the best use of time for everybody on the call. First question, Greg, comes from Candace. Mm-hmm. How do you transition to fee-based advising?
Well, that's a great question. And I think that the way you got to do it is a lot of times what people will do is make it seem like what they were in before was bad, right? Just like when people, they bring out another client from another advisor, and they talk poorly about the other advisor, or they weren't even there for the conversation. Hey, you know what? And I had this conversation because I had to turn a whole book this. I've served you really well in the past by providing you asset management. And we've done that. We've done a great job at it, and we want to still continue to serve you. But what we want to do is we want to continue to grow that relationship. And what I have found is, yeah, it's great that you're able to grow my investments, but can you help answer some more complex questions? And the one I always go to is property and casualty insurance, which is a fancy way of saying home and auto. And I'll talk about, has anyone ever looked at your home and auto outside the person that sells it to you? Do you know if you have enough coverage? Quite frankly, if somebody was drunk at a party at your house, they fell down the steps, do you think that they could get access to your investments? We never thought about that. See, that's the level that I want to help provide you with. So what we need to do is we need to collect some data. We never collected your tax return. We never collected this other stuff. We never looked at your will, living will, and power of attorney. That's the additional service I want to provide for you. But before we get started, I want to have a conversation. And we've talked about this stuff, but let's have this conversation again. What keeps you up at night? And you go down the questions. So I think that's the way you position it.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. Next one comes from Chad. How do you best differentiate yourself in marketing to prospects?
I love that question. I actually have a webinar. I'm doing another national webinar next week to talk about this specific topic. As you can tell with my background, if you can see me, I have my logo tattooed all over me. It's on multiple parts of me right now. I got cufflinks and my watch. So I love branding. But the way you can be branding is not having your logo everywhere. It's one word. It's authentic. You differentiate yourself from the crowd by being who you are. You know, I've heard somebody say that, like, and I'm a big Carl Richards fan, a big Michael Kitces fan. They have a podcast. I highly recommend it. They make fun of financial advising firms that have a lighthouse as a logo. I have a lighthouse as a logo, but it differentiates ourselves. The reason why it's a logo we created, every part of it has meaning, and we've explained it to our clients. We had to do a lighthouse. I actually didn't want to do a lighthouse when I did my branding consultant because everyone had one, but it's true to who I am. Stop worrying about others and be authentic. If you're authentic, you differentiate yourself by being who you are.
Awesome. Glenn, with our next question, did you grow your business more by digital marketing or referrals?
Another great question. It's I actually do another national webinar on this topic too next week. I love social media. I love digital marketing. Here's the reality. I grew up in this business the same way everyone else did. I've been in it for a while. I grew it through word of mouth referrals. But over the past 24 months, guess what has surpassed word of mouth referrals? Digital marketing. And that's not just because we're in a pandemic. That trend was before the pandemic. Here's the way I did it. I kept being consistent. So once you're authentic, you have to be consistent. It's the same thing with the language of eMoney. People take a dip into social media or digital marketing. eMoney did a great webinar about a month and a half ago that I was on, by the way. They have a great packet that I've actually used that you can get from them in terms of how to get started with digital marketing. But people get that packet, they implement it for 6 months, and they don't get a referral. That's like going to a networking group for 6 months and being frustrated you didn't get a single referral. You have to be consistent. A strategy, I think, whether it's a networking group, whether it's social media marketing, whether it's a nonprofit starting a charity event, it takes 3 years for something to really take off. So you need to supplement your current referral strategy with digital marketing for it to grow that way.
Next question comes from Calvin. Can you give a couple of tips on how to get existing clients to engage in planning?
Well, I think it goes right up to that other one that you had before. It's a similar question, but I think the biggest thing is you have to have that mental mindset that they need to have planning or you're going to lose them as a client. If you go into that, everything else, you know how to sell, you know how to get clients there. They wouldn't be your client if they weren't. You have to stop hearing what the client tells you that they want a faster horse and you know that they need that Model A. You come in that way, you're going to hear their objections differently and you're going to get them to do that.
This next one coming from Ethan is one that we hear from a lot of advisors. What's your process or what you found to be an efficient process to ensure you have an effective data gathering system in place when you're onboarding prospects or new clients?
Yeah, and I think I'm going to tackle this with, I know there was a question that kind of came in, what we had saw before this, where somebody was asking about like how we streamline the process, how much time. Kitces has a great article, Michael Kitces, if you don't follow him, where he tried to time planning and said you can't get it down to more than 20 hours. We've come to the same synopsis. I mean, at the end of the day, there's work to be done. You got to meet with clients, right? You can't have a robot meet with your clients. You can have a robot put in the information. But what we've done is try to take the different parts of the process and make sure everyone on our team is educated. We have a weekly team training. Our CRM, our systems are all aligned with our system. We all try to use the same exact way so we can have different members of our team take over data entry. You heard me say that like, hey, you don't know how to input your accounts. You don't know how to use the client portal. Let's give you a presentation how to use the client portal. Well, maybe that's not the best use of my time. Maybe I find somebody else on my team to do that. So I think the way to do it is you got to sit down, you got to learn the language of money, and you got to constantly redo it. When we set up a system, it started not to work. We constantly review it and we constantly update our system.
I think that tackles the next two questions in regards to time being spent on each financial plan. And then the next one is kind of time constraints on creating and delivering plans. Would you say that on average, it's somewhere between 15 and 20 hours?
Yeah, it's between 20
plan?
and 50 hours. I would say that's the first year bringing a client on. Depending on the client's needs, you can truncate that, but you can also reduce that. And one of the things that gets started with, start small. We don't have to do a comprehensive financial plan on every single client, especially if they're not used to it. It can sometimes be overwhelming. There's a lot of different advisors out there that use a 5-year system, a 3-year system, where, hey, this first year, we're going to talk about your investment management. Second year, we're going to talk about your insurance needs. Third year, we're going to talk about your will, living will, and power of attorney. Having a system like that works. We do a little bit of that, but we found it gets a little bit complicated for us. You're going to have to fill that out. But I think that, you should expect the first year, if you're doing a comprehensive plan, 20 to 50 hours, depending on the client's needs. And then typically it's between 10 and 15 hours going forward.
Gotcha. So that's the initial phase and then the ongoing. And that was the second question that we had from John in terms of refining those plans internally. So thank you. Andrea writes in, what kind of deliverable are you actually providing to the average financial planning client?
Yeah, so I'm in the broker-dealer world. I'm an independent broker-dealer, duly registered. So I do have to follow the guidelines of my corporate RIA. And we use the presentation, not the go-to presentation, but there's the presentation tool, depending on which version of the eMoney software you have that is required for my broker-dealer. I do deliver that. I used to have a big giant binder that was branded with our company and cost me money, and clients didn't like it. Then they were taking our personal information and throwing it in the trash. So we were offering to shred it for them. They want to shred it before they left the office. So we started realizing to be green, to be more really what the client needs. We've started to load that into the eMoney vault. But one of the things we do along the planning process, that first meeting, we do go to presentation on the facts. And as they meet with us, we're giving them a go to presentation. Now that's stored in their vault under reports, and they can see the progress over time of the more information. And then when we start working in Decision Center, we'll go to presentation on Decision Center or Goal Planner. You can use either one. And that provides a really quick, easy handout. But we usually say, do you want a paper copy? They usually say no. So we'll email it to them on a secure email and also provide it for their vault. And their follow-up email will say, this report's in your vault.
Love it. It's great best practices there. Another good question that we get constantly in the training team, this comes from Scott. What's your most effective eMoney client site positioning statement?
Yeah, so Steve, you and I have talked about this, and it's funny because you and I had the exact same one. I love the junk drawer video, and I get into details about it. I'll say to clients, like, we all have that junk drawer at home, and I'll actually give a personal story. Like, my wife loves those candles, and she has those long lighters, and they usually get in between the tape and the paper, and every once in a while she gets mad, frustrated. She empties out the junk drawer, and she reorganizes like it's never going to happen. For me, it's a Tupperware drawer. I get frustrated about the Tupperware. I throw the Tupperware away. I'm going to go buy fancy Tupperware, AKA all look the same. Then 6 months later, it goes that way. That's how most clients' financial life is. And that's why we don't want to give them a checklist beforehand, because you're complicating their financial life. Well, hey, we're going to organize it, and we're going to keep it organized. That's what eMoney is as a tool. And when you position it that way, and man, you show them that, and you can use eMoney, has videos for that. You can make your own video. Great way to position it.
Great answer. This next one I've gotten several times since probably February, since the coronavirus started to hit the United States. But great one from Jean Ann. Best ideas for getting to know new clients while social distancing. I've definitely seen advisors who have been able to build their business during this, and others who have struggled. What has been your process for that?
Well, I prefer myself, when people ask what I do for a living now, as a professional Zoomer. I'm on Zoom all day, every day. I think the biggest thing is just treat it as normal. In my church, I'm a person of faith, and in my faith tradition, we have a Sunday service. And when they converted over to Zoom, or excuse me, we use YouTube, I apologize. And they changed the service around because they wanted to make it more presentable on YouTube. And honestly, we started going to another church via online because we didn't like the way they changed it. And they're getting complaints. I'm not saying there's different ways you do in different forms of media. A text message is different than an email, which is different than a phone call, right? We all know that. So there's certain decorum, but I think at the end of the day, don't overcomplicate it. Just touch base. People just want to interact. It's not like, you use phone calls. I have a 90-year-old client couldn't figure out Zoom. You just call them on a phone and just, hey, talk to people, ask them questions. Don't make it overcomplicated.
One from Scott, and this is a good one, and one that I've seen many times as well. How do you efficiently combine goals-based and cash flow-based planning? And then how often should a plan be updated? Kind of two separate questions there.
Yeah. So personally, I do all cash-based planning. I'm a big believer in cash flow. I think when presented right, if we had time to go through eMoney, the way we present cash flow, I think it's the best possible way, but that's my own personal bias. And that's why I've used eMoney, because quite frankly, with eMoney, it's a cash flow system. But eMoney has done a great job coming out with foundational planning now. There are other advisors I know that love foundational planning. My biggest tip to use, if you want to use that, a more simplified, I would ask for a demo on the foundational planning. They do a great job at goals-based planning. But with our team, I can't answer because we just do cash flow. And really what we do is we focus on the goals, and the cash flow is going to get us to the goals.
Great. Here's one for the kind of eMoney side of things from Valerie. Does eMoney have a tax, estate, and philanthropic planning segment? If so, how extensive? Great question, Valerie. We have a robust tax and estate and giving component built within the software. Some examples on the tax side are that you can choose from a flat tax or a detailed 1040. With the rule changes, when big changes come like the Secure Act or the CARES Act, that gets built into the software. It may take a little bit of time, but we get that in because we know how important that is to you all as advisors. We give the ability to run projections under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, versus its sunsetting in 2026. You can build out Roth conversions, QCDs, and more. On the estate and giving side, you can build out the AB trust type of arrangement, CLTs, CRTs, GRATs, ILETs, QPERTs, IDGITs, pretty much everything under the sun. So it's very, very robust. But good question, Valerie. We've got a bunch of other questions that have come in over the last 20 minutes or so. Let me see what we can get to. Can you kind of just, yeah, go ahead.
So the one I saw that came across was the review one.
Yes.
How do you position eMoney in reviews? And this is a question I get all the time. I do eMoney trainings in my own home area for advisors. This is a really common one. And I think at the end of the day, that's one of the things where eMoney really shines, because essentially what you're doing is reviewing their goals. And I go through base facts in every single meeting with a client. You can go through base facts and formats. Hey, I just want to make sure I know your date of birth's in here correct, but do we have this correct, right? Like your address didn't change, right? And all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I moved 6 months ago. I didn't tell you. And just going through that and reviewing it, you got to remember these clients haven't talked to you for 6 months, 4 months, 3 months, whatever your review schedule is, 12 months. And they just like, it's repetition leads to retention. They appreciate it. They go through and just like, hey, look, I want to show you're still at 98% to goal. And if we increase this, you're basically doing like a really quick decision center and you're highlighting it. You'd be surprised, like, well, what does that probability mean again? And also, what if I've been thinking, what if we did Social Security at 67 instead of 66? Well, let's go here and click that. So that's really how I use it. It's great because it has the conversation around their problems, their Darth Vaders, as opposed to the tools or systems you use like their investments.
Let's see. Did you see any others that?
That was just one I saw real quick. I think it was like the first one that came in. I think there's another one I saw was about financial planning before you take over client accounts. I don't know exactly how they worded it too, but one of the things I get this all the time is, we do lead with financial planning. We say at the beginning of the meeting, you're hiring us, our engagement letter is a financial plan. If you want to use us for asset management, after we're done with this engagement, we can talk about what that engagement looks like. But when you're done with our financial plan, you can take this anywhere and implement this financial plan anywhere. One, we are being unbiased, and we truly are. And that's what clients want. They want a fiduciary standard. They want a best interest. They want to pay you for financial planning because now they know you have what's in your best interest at heart. If I'm a company that only sells a mutual fund, guess what you're going to get? A mutual fund. If I'm a company that only sells a whole life policy, guess what you're going to get? A whole life policy. They want to know that you're going to give them a recommendation they can turn and walk away. What ends up happening is then they're going to want to turn it over to you at the end, and we can come to that. Every once in a while, we'll have a client. I just had this happen where they're like, hey, my company's they're getting rid of my 401k. I have 30 days to get this money out of here. Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put this in the exact same asset allocation you have there. We'll have an investment conversation, but we have to do a financial plan within the first 6 months to figure out, is this right for you? So even in those really small circumstances, 1 or 2% of the time where I have to take over their asset management before, a lot of times I have clients, well, I just want you to manage my assets. Well, you know what? I'm not the right advisor for you. And then they're like, wait, what? And then they want to go through financial plan. They'll get to that point. So I think it goes back to that confidence level of, you got to say that if you don't give them that faster horse, somebody else will. And clients, I've never had an issue with that.
Great. Let's take one more question. This is one that I'm interested in your answer to as well, and one that I faced and sometimes in the beginning had a bit of a challenge answering, which is, what if clients think they are fine as they are and don't need planning? How do you address that?
Well, that's like a client that said they can do their own investments. How do you answer that one? It's confidence. That is your problem, not their problem. If you don't believe in it, that's because you don't have a financial plan yourself. If you change that mindset, you will lose that client if they don't do financial planning. It's because you didn't talk about their problems and solve their problem. They look at financial planning as making their life harder, not easier, and that's why they're objecting it. So you just got to get to the point and be like, wait, you don't care about that lake house? Well, I mean, if I get the investments, can we get that lake house? Let's talk about that lake house cost. Let's get on Zillow. Let's have some fun with this. So with all that being said, if there's questions I didn't address, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Send me a message. If you want to talk, I would be more than happy. I believe God put me on this earth to help other financial advisors multiply their business, and I would be honored to help you and fill those questions in for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. And thanks everybody for these fantastic questions and really being super interactive with Greg here today. I just want to remind you that in the chat feature, you do have that link to sign up for a free trial or demo. And then also we have on the screen here our eMoney Summit, which we put on once a year. I had the privilege of being able to go last year in person, which is in Texas. This year, unfortunately, is going to be virtual, but we'll have most of the same content and a lot of the great breakout sessions that a lot of the advisors are used to. As an example, I did one with a colleague of mine who's also CFP on complex retirement planning and able to kind of see what it looks like in the real world, just like Greg was talking about in regards to kind of a review meeting and building that plan for the client and then presenting it. We have many others ranging from estate to tax. So certainly sign up for that, and we'll look forward to seeing you in October. And I think this has been great. I hope everybody's gotten a lot of great value from Greg, and certainly encourage everybody to really start doing some more planning.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.